One of the things that I've learned writing the book is about the different ways of knowing. That, we grow up in a society where only really one way of knowing is accepted, and that's the scientific method, which we teach at this university, that we see in our media, a certain filter on the world. And I met a whole number of people who identify as spiritual activists, and they taught me a lot about how change can happen. And I thought I would just, document this and say, well, there seems to be similar values: horizontal organizing, bottom-up organizing, embracing diversity, working from the head and the heart together. But I realized, as I was working on the book, I realized it went further than that. There was really a kind of theory emerging for me, a theory of power, which is why I called the book Transforming Power. Again, Velcro gave me that title. I didn't know until after, and I Googled it, that it's actually a religious term, transforming the power within. Transforming the power within. But the way I'm using it is a little different, which is the idea that comes out of the women's movement of the personal is political. Before the women's movement, on the left, we believed that power was located in the state and capital, and the idea, if you were revolutionaries, which I was to seize state power, or if you were a social democrat, to get into power. And we had better ideas than they had, so we get into power, and then we put our ideas into place, our policies, and then everything would be good. And I think what we are developing now, what we are developing in Latin America, in North America, and there's a lot in the book about the States especially, where they're doing amazing work, and in Europe, at least those are the places that I've traveled, is a new way of changing the world, which is rooted in a lot of the ideas of the past, but not clinging to any of the ideologies in the past. And that's understands that changing power at a state level is related to changing our relations with each other. That until we learn how to not be dominant or not dominate in the process of change, we learn that in the process of change, we're not able to change the nature of the society. People who haven't struggled with their own privilege, their own ability to dominate, when they get into power, we've seen it a million times. They carry out the power the same way as the others. So it's in Bolivia that I think the most profound process of transformation is happening, and I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but there's a chapter in the book, and quite a lot in the book, about Bolivia. In Venezuela it's happening, although not with a different style of leadership, but Bolivia, where with a 70% majority indigenous population who were completely marginalized and excluded, have taken power, have taken government, and are building power and exercising that power in a way that's consequent to their values of communalism, their values of embracing diversity, their values of deep and profound democracy. And it's not only there that I see it. I see it really all over. So what I've done is I've invited 4 people who are all quoted in one way or another in the book to dialogue with me about some of these ideas.
I think the importance of Judy's book and the importance of the work of the thousands of people that she is talking about all over the world is we're trying to actually turn this around really from the bottom up. What are the movements, what are the organizing strategies, what can we do that might potentially provide people with some tools to move forward that allows us to both keep the analysis of what's wrong and the potential strategies for what might be right, the sort of pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will strategies. And in that, the only things that seem to be working are the things that Judy has just said, that she's pointed out in the book. the interrelationship of vibrant grassroots organizations that serve and that actually care about delivering change right now.
In the book, she takes on the responsibility of bearing witness to many Canadian and international struggles and various mobilizations, political practices and actions offered up in resistance to capitalism, to imperialism, to colonialism, patriarchy, racism, and other forms of oppression. So the book is part a critique of the neoliberal order and part a call to a spiritual, a more democratic way of doing movement politics. It's a frantic sweep of some of the most recent struggles of the 20th century as they struggle to articulate alternatives to capitalism and imperialism.
As Judy says in her book, and I'm coming out of my closet here, it's been the work I've done in many organizations, in many sort of small groups of people, but here I'm speaking it to my community, that we need to learn how to reunite our emotional and spiritual selves with our political selves in the work that we do if we really want to create the change we're seeking. As transformational leaders, we need to be as skilled in the inner realms as we are in the outer. We need to be as much self-aware as we are good at strategy. We need to be as compassionate as we are critical. And it's not an easy path. Creating inner change can sometimes, and in fact I believe often, is harder than creating external change. And yet here is where our real power lies.
To me, a spiritual perspective is really more than anything as simply a depth perspective. A perspective that looks at any situation from a holistic or integrated perspective, which means that you bring in multiple dimensions to every consideration. And that translates into very real-world ways of operating. For me, another definition of spirituality is an understanding of the interconnectedness of everything. And that's actually, in many spiritual principles, that's really, traditions, that's really a very central principle. And in Judy's book, she talks about Ubuntu as one of those representations of that, which is the idea that I am because you are, that everything exists in relation. And when we start applying that to the way we create change in the world, and we recognize that absolutely everything is interconnected, I think we can let go of some of our old notions. You know, one of the problems that plagues the left is often the idea that everybody is, just focused on their particular issue. Their issue is the most particular, the most important issue. And this idea of interconnectedness recognizes that actually all issues are important, all issues need to be addressed, and they actually all interrelate and affect each other.
I mean, we're talking about serious change in Latin America. And that, to me, is a job that I was supposed to do, trying to bridge Canada, Quebec, and Latin America in many ways. But Judy is doing a much better job in that sense, because the important thing is that she brings together the experiences that Latin America in different processes is undergoing with other experiences in Canada and beyond. And that's what we need today. And that's why I think that her book is so important and timely. Now that when either we build alternatives or we decided to go fishing, because this is the time exactly when we have to do that. And that is one of the main contributions of the book. We have a small historical window in which social organizations from around the world, including Canada, can really bring about change. Otherwise, we might want to think again of taking a long nap and forget about this time, because this is, I guess, a time. And thank you, Judy, for bringing all this movement, all these ideas, all these experiences together, and having it here available.